Good morning. I'm on, I think. My name is Adam Shin. I am one of the pastors here. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. You look great this morning. All right, I'm going to say that one more time. This is a compliment. You look great this morning. All right, that's a little bit better. I've been on staff now here for 13 years, and it's been a privilege of my life to serve at this church. I love you guys. I love the church. And Pastor Tony, I figured it up this week. In the 13 years that I've been here, I have heard Pastor Tony preach, teach, do a little devotion over 1,000 times. And his Easter message 2 weeks ago was probably easily in the top 3 of the 1,000 that he's given. It was phenomenal. And so this morning, I get the privilege, while he is in the Rocky Mountains doing whatever him and Miss Tricia like to do, I get to do a sequel to his message on Easter. But it's not like a traditional sequel, not like Mission Impossible 1, 2, 77, those type of things. It's kind of a sequel. It takes place within the original story. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the creators of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, they are creating a new movie called The Search for Gollum. And it takes place within the very first movie. And so that's what this message is about. It takes place within the Easter message. But Pastor Tony inspired me to remember when he's in Colorado, the one time I drove in the Colorado mountains. I will not do that again. I was 27 years old. I was a student pastor, and I had lived in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and in Florida my whole life, flat land. I had never driven in the mountains except for on the interstate, so I had no experience driving in snow and anything like that. And so I had to drive. My youth staff, my evil youth staff, they decided that they wanted to go on a ski retreat, and I got to drive. I had to drive one of the vans, and we start to ascend up this mountain, and fog descends. Snow pours. I have 14 teenagers in the van with me, another van behind me, and another car after that, and there's already a van that was already there. And I'm the keynote speaker, so I got to get there, but I am panicking. I can't see in front I can't even see barely out of the front of the van. And it's pouring snow. I've only had one winter experience driving in snow in Kansas at that time. And I'm in a different vehicle that I'm used to. I've never driven in snow. I've never seen this road that I'm going on, and now I can't even see the road. And then to top it all off, the windshield wipers flew off. I am not kidding. That was the worst driving experience in my life. I was petrified. It was at least a solid hour and a half up that mountain. And all I could see was the very front of the van. How many of us have ever been that way in our life? We've been on an unfamiliar road. We can't see in front of us. We don't know how we got there. We might have turned on the road intentionally, but it's unfamiliar to us. And we're gripping at the steering wheel of life, white-knuckling it all the way up, and we have no clue if we're ever going to see tomorrow. And now you're convinced that God can't see you, He can't hear you, you can't feel Him. You're convinced that God can't hear your prayers anymore, and you pretty much believe that God doesn't care anymore. Have we been there? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe it's too early in the morning, to be honest. But this is what I know. This is what statistics tell us. About half of this room have been on that road at least once this week. About a third of this room is being overwhelmed every day by that road. And you might be thinking right now, well, I'm not on that road right now, but next week, this road will be in it. and overwhelmed. Then the following week, you guys will be in it and you'll be overwhelmed. So, what do you do? What do you do when you can't hear or feel or anything like that? You can't feel God at all. The title of my message this morning is When God is Silent. What do you do when it seems that God is silent? And there is a part in the Easter story where God is silent. See, Easter is a three-part story. It's a three-day journey. We're good at celebrating Good Friday. We come and we remember God's sacrifice. We remember what Jesus did for us on the cross. And then we immediately run to Sunday. He is risen. He is awesome. We celebrate. We have big bands and all this kind of stuff. Pastor gives one of the best messages he's ever preached in the 13 years that I've been here. But what about Saturday? When you're in a 3-day story, you don't know when Sunday's coming. When Friday is there, you have lost your dream. You've lost everything. And on top of that, Saturday's come, and you don't know Sunday's right around the corner. You don't know if Sunday's ever going to get here. You don't know if deliverance is ever going to be there. As a long-suffering Chicago Bears fan, every season is Saturday for me. Well, let's not talk about the Falcons. They've never won. But at least the Bears have won in my lifetime. A long time ago, 40 years ago. But on Friday, the disciples, they lost their leader. They lost their dream. They lost their destiny. The man they have followed for 3+ years is now dead, gone. And then when trouble hits you, the agony of Friday, you call out to God. You hear me, listen to me. God, answer me, do something. Say something. Nothing. And then Saturday hits. And I would love to give you a scripture right now about how the disciples felt, but there's nothing. There's nothing written about Saturday. This is the only day in the last 2,000 years not one person on the planet believed Jesus was alive. The disciples are in hiding. And on Saturday, on top of the agony of Friday, now is the pain of the silence and absence of God. Oh, I think the disciples were feeling Psalm 88. I would read the entire chapter, but I don't have the time. But I want to go to 13 and verse 14. I feel that this is what the disciples were crying. But I, O Lord, cry to you. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. O Lord, why cast my soul away? Why do you hide your face from me? When you're silent, when God is silent, there are 4 things that you need to do. Number 1 is you need to stay persistent. In Matthew 15, Jesus was at Tyre and Sidon, and a Canaanite woman comes up to him. Now, she is not Jewish. She is pagan. And she screams, Lord, have mercy on me, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. And you would think, in the way we present Jesus in our culture, Jesus would rush to answer. But what does it say in verse 23? It says, but he answered not a word. My Jesus wouldn't ignore this woman. Why would Jesus ignore her? He wouldn't answer her. And then the disciples, they say, Jesus, please send her away, either with an answer, save her daughter, or just send her away. She's annoying. And Jesus says, I wasn't sent to her. I was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. She's not Jewish. My Jesus would never say that. But it didn't matter. She screamed, Lord, help me. Help me. And then she got into a little debate with Jesus. She was persistent. And a lot of times in our life when we're on that road, we cry out to God, and when he doesn't answer, we quit. He doesn't care about us anymore. Not every day is Sunday in our lives. But this woman didn't quit. She was persistent, like the persistent widow who day after day after day went to the judge. Judge, give me justice. And in verse 5 of Luke chapter 18, the judge says, this widow keeps bothering me. I will give her justice so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And then Jesus says, and will not God give justice to his elect who cry to me day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? That is a question. Jesus asked the question, will I find faith like that on the earth? Will I find persistent faith? Because if you can always feel God and you can always hear God and every day is Sunday, there's no need for faith. Let me repeat that because I don't think you got it. If you can always feel God and you can always hear God, there's no need for faith. Because then, after Jesus is moved by her faith, by her persistence, and he says, woman, you have great faith. Your daughter's healed. And because you can't hear God, and you can't feel God at the moment, doesn't mean he's absent. Don't believe everything you're feeling. Your feelings are emotions. Your feelings will fool you. You need to get out of your feelings and activate your faith. Listen, I'm not up here saying that I got it all worked out. This week has been a rough week for me, honestly. And I've had to sit here and go, Adam, are you persistent in your prayer life? The last 18 months for me haven't been the greatest. Am I persistent in coming to God even when I can't hear him? Because life isn't a movie. It's not answered in 2 hours. Can't get a good feeling and walk out the theater and everything's fine. That's not how life works. So you have to stay persistent in your prayer life. Number 2 is remember that he cares. Psalm 100 said in verse 3, know that the Lord is God, that he who made us, and we are his people, the sheep of his pasture. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. For his faithfulness continues through all generations. We just sang about that. We're his. He cares for his people. In John chapter 11, Jesus finds out that his dear friend Lazarus is sick. And he waits a couple of days, and when he finally gets there, Lazarus had already died. And after an emotional conversation with Mary and Martha, what does it say in verse 35? It's the easiest scripture in all of the Bible to memorize. Jesus wept. But the Greek says is Jesus bursted into tears. He was emotional. He cared about Lazarus. He cared about the pain of Mary and Martha. Even though he knew what he was about to do, he still cared. And in verse 38 it says, Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. He was now agitated over why Lazarus died. He was agitated because Lazarus had died. And so when you lose a job, Jesus cares. When you lose a friend, he cares. When your health goes bad, he cares. When you have a dream that dies, he cares. On Friday in your life, Jesus cares. On Saturday, when you can't feel him, and you can't hear him, and he's silent, remember that he cares. Stay persistent. Remember that he cares. And number 3 is remember his power. In Mark chapter 4, there's a big storm, and in verse 37 it says, and a great storm arose, and the winds were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. I love that line. Jesus was on a body pillow sleeping. And the disciples are fighting for their life, and he's snuggled up on a body pillow taking a nap. And they're crying out, Jesus, save us. Don't you see we're drowning? And he's snoring. How many times have we prayed that? Have we prayed, we're like, Jesus, help me, save me. Look at what I'm doing. I'm not trying not to capsize. I'm doing this, and nothing. Sometimes we think that we start praying that prayer and we're telling God everything we're doing, but how does everything that we're doing, how is your discomfort going to move a God whose emblem is a cross? You're not going to move him by everything that you're doing because he's done everything. Sometimes when Jesus doesn't say something or when he's sleeping, like in this text, doesn't mean he's not going to do something. Not that he's not going to do it. He awoke and he rebuked the winds and the waves by 3 words, peace, be still. And then he looks at him and goes, where is your faith? Because the level of your crisis does not prompt God to move. Your faith does. The level of your crisis does not prompt God to move. It's your faith. And then there was another storm in Matthew 14. The disciples are now in chaos again, but this time Jesus isn't with them. And they're battling the winds and the waves again. And I wonder if the disciples are like, where's Jesus this time? Obviously, he's not here. That was probably Thomas that said that. But then they see Jesus walking, but they think he's a ghost, and they start panicking even more. Now they're distracted by the winds and the waves, and now a ghost is coming to kill him. And now he's panicking. They're panicking, and now Jesus goes, it's me. Calm down. Take courage. But how did they know his voice? How did they know his voice? That was Jesus. How do you know his voice when he's ready to speak to you? Is it the tingly feelings? You get those when a cute girl's sitting by you, right? Or when Pastor Coleman plays the right song. But how do you know when God's talking to you? When he's ready. Now, you've heard all of these statistics before. These statistics are not new. Children under the ages of 12, their screen time per day is 6 hours a day. Teenagers, 13 to 17, 9 hours a day. Young adults, 18 to 24, 10 hours a day. Adults, 25 to 54, 9 hours a day. The classics, 7 hours a day. How are you going to hear God when half of your waking time is in front of a screen? And that's everybody in the room. When half of what was Jesus doing before he was walking on water? He was praying. He had spent an entire day ministering. He was tired, and he went up and spent time with the Father. Have you ever been in a stadium and there's nobody in there? I've had the privilege a couple of times to get to go into Sanford Stadium, and there's nobody in there. And me and you, we could come out and we can throw a football 20, 30 yards, and we can have a conversation. We can talk just like this, and I can hear you and you can hear me. And I can hear all the workers that are working around the stadium. But fill that stadium up on a Saturday against Tennessee, you cannot hear your neighbor. When there's no distractions in your life, you will be able to hear the voice of God when he talks. But fill it with every distraction going on, you will not be able to fill it. So how did they hear him with all the distractions, the winds, the waves, the thinking he's a ghost? Because he was stronger than the storm. He spoke over the storm. His words were more powerful than the storm. He calmed the storm with 3 simple words. Peace, be still. He was more powerful than the storm. Who sent them onto the shore? Who sent them away? It was Jesus. That's a whole message by itself. Because sometimes Jesus will send you into a storm to test your faith, to see if you believe that he's really more powerful than the circumstances that you're going through. And so when it's Saturday in your life, you need to stay persistent. Number 2, you need to remember that he cares. And remember that he's powerful. And the fourth one is remember what he said and did. Matthew 28, verse 6. He is not here. He is risen as he said. And like I told you, this was a sequel. I'm going to let Pastor Tony finish this point.
You can bank on the fact because he is risen, you can hold on to this when he says, my grace will be sufficient for you. In your weakness, my strength will be more than enough. If you're in a dark hour of the soul, you can rest on this truth because he is risen. And when he said, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you. If you're going through a difficult financial time, because he is risen, you can hold on to the promise that says, I shall supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. Why do we hold on to it? Just because he said it? No. But because he said it, then he said he would die, then he said he would rise again, and because he did, we can bank our entire life, our entire eternity on the fact that the angel of the Lord proclaimed to us, he is not dead, he is risen just as he said.
When I was driving that van up the Colorado mountains, I was panicked. I was white-knuckling the steering wheel because I could not see where I was going. I was on an unfamiliar road. I couldn't hear. I couldn't feel God. I was so scared. But when the fog started to lift a little bit and the snow kind of stopped, I looked out of my driver's window and I saw this. I didn't see that before. That mountain had been there the entire time. Beautiful, majestic, and I just couldn't see it because of the distractions in my life. And just because it's Saturday and God is silent, it doesn't mean he's not there. That he is not there in your life. And I found a quote by Billy Graham that's about 5 paragraphs long. And I'm going to read it, and it'll be on the screen. And it kind of sums up this entire message. So I want you to listen to this. Sometimes the silence of God is overwhelming. All you hear is silence. No signs, no whispers, nothing. But what if silence is speaking louder than words? When God is silent, he is not ignoring you. He is preparing you. The teacher is quiet during the test because he or she wants to see what you have learned. His silence is not rejection, it's a redirection. Maybe he's closing a door because he has something greater ahead. When God is silent, he's building your faith, Adam. Can you trust him? Even when you don't hear him, can you believe in his goodness? When you don't see his hand at work, faith isn't about feelings. It's about confidence in his promises and what he said. When God is silent, he's working behind the scenes. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean there's no progress. Seeds grow in the dark before they break through the soil. Trust that his silence is not absence. It is an alignment. Sometimes his silence is an invitation to lean closer, to seek him more deeply. And this is the best line I've ever heard Billy Graham say, to rest in his presence rather than just his answers. Pastor Tony gave us another devotion in our lead team meeting this past week. And in John chapter 15, Jesus says, abide in me and I will abide in you. And abide means to remain connected. When is your abide? When do you abide in him? If your life is full of distractions, when do you have time to abide in him? When do you have time to connect with him? When do you pursue him? James 4, verse 8, it says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Do you know who determines the intimacy level that you have with Jesus? You do. You and how you pursue him. Jesus has done everything. He's just waiting for you. So if God is silent, don't lose hope, because his silence is not the end of the story. It's set up for something greater. If you can always feel God, if you can always hear God, you don't need faith. And you know, when I walk off this stage, my circumstances will not have changed. I will still have to stay persistent in my prayer life. I will have to remind myself that he cares about me. I will have to remember his power, and I'll have to remember what he said and what he did. In the worst moment in human history, God was silent. When Jesus was on the cross, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me alone? But in Jesus' darkest hour, God was performing the greatest miracle in the dark. He was redeeming all man back to himself, and his son was all alone. And he was doing the greatest miracle ever. So if you can't feel God, you can't hear God, maybe he's working through your darkness. He's working through the silence, because he has never left you, nor has he forsaken you. So this morning, as those that are preparing for communion, if they'll come, we're going to do exactly what 3 of the 4 points were. We're going to remember this morning. We're going to remember what he said and what he did. Did you know that in the early church, if you come on Wednesday nights, Pastor Tony had been giving a couple weeks of church history. In the early church, do you know when the presence of God was mostly felt? It wasn't during the singing. It wasn't during the message. It was when they participated in Holy Communion, when they remembered the sacrifice that Jesus did. And you know when they did that? Every time they met. So this is not just a time that we do once a month. This is holy. This is a time of remembrance. And if you're in a time in your life and you can't feel and you can't hear God, let me encourage you, he's here. Just remember his sacrifice. Remember what he's done, because he's never left you, nor will he forsake you. And as they pass the plates this morning, remember take this time and remember. Don't just grab the elements and wait on me to come back up. Remember. Take this time and remember what he's done.
Let it be. You're my refuge and my strength. You alone will be a firm foundation. What you've spoken is enough. It's the ground we're standing on. You are God and we will not be shaken. You've spoken as it's written, let it be. You alone will be a firm foundation. What you've spoken is enough. It's the ground we're standing on. You are God and we will not be shaken. As it's written, let it be. You're my refuge and my strength. You alone will be a firm foundation. What you've spoken is enough. It's the ground we're standing on. You are God and we will not be shaken. You keep your promises. Your goodness never ends. From generation to generation, you keep your covenant. And we've seen your faithfulness.
On the night he was betrayed, he took bread, and he gave thanks, and he broke it. And he said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he also took the cup after the supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink in remembrance of me." Let's sing this song one more time, and let's just stay seated. Just remember what he's done.
You keep